Hello. Today I'm going to try and show you this fan art book that I made based off of the CryptoNaturalist podcast. I know that most of you probably haven't heard of this podcast. I will include all of the information about it in the description if you're interested in checking it out. It's basically a project by Jarod K Anderson. He's an author and poet. Um, And I found him during COVID times. I suppose COVID times never really went away, but lockdown times when I was feeling quite detached from nature, couldn't go out, go places that I'd normally go, and the algorithm of Instagram introduced me to Jared's work. Now I own all of his books, and I am not a poetry person at all, but his poetry that it's much to do with nature, science, deep time, mental health really appealed to me, really still appeals to me. And if you would like to check that out, again, all the stuff will be in the description below. As this is a fan art book, I want to make it abundantly clear that the words are not mine. 98% of the words are directly from the transcripts of the podcast. In my mind, as developing this as a fan art project, I was kind of thinking, some of the podcast might be based on ways written in his travels or based on um after or before. Some are during, so I've had to change the time context of some of the words. That's why I say 97%. But it's all his work. The Crypto Naturalist is a whole fantasy thing. He's a naturalist who um specializes in crypto nature. So cryptids like your Sasquatches, your whatnot, Loch Ness monster type stuff, except he's invented many. And he travels the world in his Winnebago, sentient Winnebago, and it's all very cute but also interesting, and I really enjoy it. So yeah, I found him because of his poetry. Everything in his poetry was tagged CryptoNaturalist. I'm like, what's that? I checked it out, and yeah, I've listened to all of the podcasts. To make this book, it covers about the first 30 podcasts, so from 2018 to the end, I think, of 2019. Some episodes I had to skip because I didn't translate into a journal, but there's about 27 episodes, 28 episodes worth of content in this book. And yeah, this is not for sale. It is a fan art project. It is mine. The other reason why I wanted to show you this, besides the fact that it is a cool little chunk of fan art that I spent a great deal of time making, is because, the journals that I make and I sell, um, they're often very nature-based, some are a bit witchy. Um, a lot of people like them and have purchased them, but they don't know how to fill them. So, showing you my own personal ones that I filled, not ideal. They're full of pictures of my kids and personal things that I don't want to share across the internet. However, if I do it in the context of fan art, you can see like ideas of how to translate into your own um journal creations or how to fill a similar type of journal, handmade journal. So, right, I'll get into this. Remember, all of the things from the author and the inspiration are in the description if you'd like to check out any of his work, his website. It's all there. And I will get into the book. So, in my books, I also try to involve a great deal of texture, and mostly brown and green are my go to colors anyway. But for the CryptoNaturalist specifically, I kind of imagine him as someone who might just be taking bits and pieces and scraps of nature and paper as he travels the world in search of crypto nature. And that's how the journal's been compiled. It's growing things um, as happens, I suppose. This cover here, this is actually cork bark. This is a little pocket. So this is real cork bark fabric. So it's like very, very thin sheets of cork bark that have been glued to fabric to create a flexible material. It's very soft and almost velvety. So I thought that was appropriate. I made a button here out of real tree bark. I believe it's birch bark. This is like fake kind of grassy terrain stuff for model making. There's bits here. I've involved, this is a UV light. You can see bits of this glow. So all those little white bits glow in the dark, like little fungal mushroomy bits, I suppose. Just taking you still through the outside of the book. I've got this linen over the spine, reinforcing it. It's a hardbacked book. It is fabric covered. I did all of that by hand. Of course, this is more cork that I made the second button with here. There's a little brassy, bronzy pine cone, and that's just your tour of the outside of the book. And I know I've been rambling for quite some time. I don't know if I've mentioned so far, I've been unwell, so I apologize for the raspy coffeeness that might come to pass. Now, this first part of the book I've just filled with these little baggies and things. In my imagination, for the character of the CryptoNaturalist, he's constantly observing things, recording things, taking specimens of things for further analysis. So this pocket in the front are just empty baggies and things for that. I open it out, and I have to say I did have quite a lot of inspiration drawn from like the Gravity Falls Journal 3. That's a very popular book in my house. Or even my husband said that's kind of like a Grail diary from Indiana Jones. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the idea. So it's the Journal of the CryptoNaturalist. I've got some pins here. That's a little pocket. There's pockets here. Throughout, I've got quotes from Jarod's bits of poetry. He's also got bits of his from his poetry books, but also from the transcripts of the podcast. There are lots of bits and pieces there to draw from, and this is embossing folder fodder. Again, most of what I make is very naturey anyway, so it fit with the theme very well, and everything just looks a bit green and grungy and torn, because I have, grunged it up. But the idea is like everything he owns is just covered in bits of nature, bits and pieces reflecting his travels. This is also kind of an incomplete fan art project. There's bits I would still like to get to put inside, so anyway, so a key character in the podcast is Winnebago Cassandra, and he does say her make and model, so I actually looked that up. And I printed off a photo that I found on Google of the make and model that Cassandra, the sentient Winnebago, is meant to be. And this is supposed to be like a picture of her. little bits of poetry, little bits of all sorts. And this is basically the first line ever of the podcast. So that's obviously on the first page. In my journals, I also like to, I'll put that back in later. I like to use lots of different papers, lots of different textures, which can also be intimidating, but like how do you use that? How do you work around it? The different different pens will respond in different ways to different textures of paper, so it's all part of the experience. Also, something I wanted to mention was all of the photographs I've included in this book. I've got a little thermal printer, so also kind of like in my imagination of this CryptoNaturalist character, I think of it almost in a Warehouse 13 context. I don't know how many people even get that reference. Warehouse 13 was a show on the Sci-Fi Channel. I think it ran for 3 seasons or something. I have every episode, of course. But they use unconventional technology. So my idea, and the crypto naturalist, throughout his travels, mentions a great deal of unconventional technology. So I thought that the thermal printer, being grainy and not quite what you'd expect, it suits him. It suits him. So yes. Now just going through some of these pages. I've got specimens, like for example, this episode had to do with a cryptids found beneath a blue spruce. I found blue spruce needles. I drove my husband crazy trying to get blue spruce needles. I live in Scotland, as many of you know. However, I know I sound very American because I grew up in Rhode Island. So that's the northern east coast of the US. So a lot of this podcast also makes me feel incredibly nostalgic for home. But finding a blue spruce, not so easy in Scotland. I mean, they do exist. We love the Victorians for all of the plants they spread around, which maybe they shouldn't have so much, but um excuse me, finding a tree that was definitively a blue spruce was going to be a challenge. However, I found some potted up in a garden shop around Christmas time. So, yes, I found actual blue spruce needles to attach to this. It's also mention of a Waffle House. I have never been to a Waffle House. Apparently, it's a chain in the US. And I found an actual Waffle House receipt to print out from thank you, Google. So there's a Waffle House receipt here. But again, if you're filling a book yourself with your own personal stuff, if you can draw, draw. If you don't draw, that's okay too. You can print out all sorts of things. You can glue in, you can clip in, paper clip in, little baggies. They work really well for little keepsakes and things. So that's just a bunch of examples of how to use one of these books. I dated everything according to when the podcasts aired. Well, not necessarily when the podcasts aired, but when I surmised the events that were written about took place. The writing part. So again, some of these will be after the broadcast, some before, depending on how it was worded. This is another whole adventure, so I've got the various cryptids, highlighted bits and facts, and this is all directly taken from the transcripts. The illustrations are obviously mine, based on my imaginings. We've got the sea squatch there, the orbital kingfisher, more thermal printed pictures. So this takes place Sky Lakes Wilderness. I found Sky Lakes Wilderness photos on Google, printed one out, and put it in here. Sketches are mine. There was mention of a nosebleed that should have happened on this page, but you know, I can't bleed on command into my art, unfortunately. Excuse me. Elephant spider. That was quite a good one. So yeah, there's just like various entries, just sporadic. You can see the different textures within the pages. We've got craft, K-R-A-F-T paper, various different colors of paper, tea-dyed paper, lined paper. This one covers a couple of cryptids. I thought this is actually tissue paper. Or tracing paper. I have tracing paper pages. This worked out really well, as this critter is meant to be two-dimensional. So I thought that was quite clever anyway. But for these types of pages as well, you can always glue things in to make them more opaque. I like how you can see the writing behind the illustration here and through the illustration as well. Yeah. So this is all 2018 as well. It's urban salamander. I had to make a whole thing here. I found another. This is meant to take place in a Kroger, I'm assuming that's pronounced that way, parking lot, and that's a grocery chain in the US. And I did find a receipt again and it was meant to be like raining and wet, so I really grunged it up. Like, the receipt is just a little keepsake for that particular shop where the urban salamanders were found and observed. There's also mention of acoustic bats in this episode. They're mentioned in several episodes. They are kind of like pets in his studio, his recording studio. So I just have like a bat pin paperclip there just for that. The next episode, The Half Remembered Forests, has mention of post-it notes. So I've done all the post-it notes with all the notes that were mentioned, as well as some critters, cryptid critters. And as you see, I've just done the notes, I've done some illustrations. It's a journal. It's a journal. On this page, actually, the pen bled through. It bled through the paper, so to compensate for that, because these are all different papers, all different thicknesses and textures, I just glued in another bit of paper, and that, you know, compensated for the fact that the pen had bled through. Again, with the printed, thermal printed bits, and here, or somewhere in here, something's missing. Where did it go? I don't know. Here it is. Okay. So this one took up quite a few pages. It was a really good, this one of my favorite, creatively, my favorite creatures in this series. It's a barn that's not a barn. So that's a barn swallow, which is mentioned in the episode. There's hidden lore segments in the episode. Sometimes it's Jarod's work, sometimes it's the work of other authors, and this one I printed out because I quite liked it. And here, this barn situation occurs in a field with clover, so we have samples of clover. Ideally, this clover would be from, you know, is it Ohio, this one? Western Pennsylvania. If I wanted, if I could, I would like have someone post me clover from Western Pennsylvania. That would just make it so much more authentic, and I would definitely love to do that. That's why I kind of think of this as being not 100% complete, because there's bits I'd still like to add or adjust. But yeah, the electric king snake, I tried something different here with alcohol inks and plastic to try and get the shiny translucent effect. I'm not convinced it was particularly effective or successful, but it's glued in there, so it lives there. This takes place on Lake Michigan. There was mention of maple leaves. I would have liked to put a dried maple leaf in here maybe, but it's winter and there are no maple leaves right now. So I did find some photos of kind of the coast of Lake Michigan on the interwebs, and I printed those out with the thermal printer again. So there's bits and pieces and scraps and more critters. In this one, this is the storm shark one. There's mention of a modified fish finder because a storm shark is a creature which is formed out of microbes in the air. Anyway, so there's mention of a fish finder. So I got an actual image of a shark on a fish finder. So there's a modified fish finder for the air to locate the storm shark. And yeah, it's just silly little things that I was, with the power of Google, I found all sorts of pictures that kind of suited, and then printed them out in that grainy way. I think this podcast here is one of my favorites. The Sassafras Grove. I remember I have very vivid memories from my childhood of sassafras. It's such an interesting plant because the leaves are all different shapes or variations of different shapes, and there's a smell, and I don't know, I really connected with that specific episode. And this is another tracing paper page that worked quite well, just being kind of double-sided. There's stuff stuck to it. And this is the middle of the book. And yeah, that's one of my favorites. Constellation Turtle is one that I tried to kind of draw it. I wasn't sure how because of the nature of the creature. I can't really see there are bits of invisible ink throughout this as well that I've not shown you, so that's also very, very Journal 3 Gravity Falls inspired. So there's bits that glow on that too, but I used kind of just the graphite of pencil to make it shiny, I guess. This is one of the favorite pictures I've drawn in here. I mean, I didn't spend a ton of time on the drawings. They're just little sketchy illustrations. I could have lost myself in this project for years if I really put that kind of specificity that kind of energy into. I've got so many other things I'd like to do, and I really enjoyed doing this. I really wanted to do this. I planned it for a long time. I worked on it for a long time. But yeah, a lot of the sketches are just like doodles. They're not polished. But I really like the cob. I'd have no idea if this is what a cob looks like in the author's imagination, but this is what it inspired me to create, based on the text. And then there's a lovely poem here about chickenpox virus that just absolutely tickles me. And here's island of teeth in Cyprus. Funny story, I actually have cypress seeds from a little island. It's not an uncharted island in the middle of, I think it was the Pacific. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. Anyway, yeah, funny story. Isle of Raasay is just off of Skye in Scotland, and it's a really beautiful place. It's so small and it's just got some really unique features. Totally worth a visit. Anyway, I'd never seen a cypress cone before, and on the shore, as I'm picking my way through pebbles on the beach, I find this spherical pine cone that I was completely unfamiliar with, and I took it home. I looked it up and learned that it was a cypress cone. And in time, it opened up and all these seeds came out. So I actually had cypress seeds to put in the. I thought that was a cool little specimen type thing to put in there, but also found on the coast of an island. So that tied together quite well. And this is a beetle. I think it's called a Valentine beetle. So I took a random beetle picture and kind of tried to give it tick mouth parts for that. And the green stranger, this is just a bit of moss I thought kind of suited as kind of a specimen memento type thing in here. More sketches, and this again is one of the translucent tracing paper pages. And here I've just glued this in, which made it opaque enough you can see bits through it. I quite like those pages. I include them in most of my books. But again, it's something that people might not know what to even do with it. Just like the fact that you can see through it, and it's a different texture, it makes different sound. Everything's very tactile, and I don't know. They're very satisfying books. I enjoy making them, I enjoy using them. I want other people to have this enjoyment. Book Fox, this was another really good episode to do with a library. I am terrible at drawing anything remotely dog-like, but I think I got Fox across okay here. At my first attempt looked like a chubby red panda, so this is definitely an improvement. I actually looked up, so this episode takes place in Ohio, specifically Muskingum County. I looked up on the internet an actual library in this actual place, and I got a photo from there. So it's like not necessarily taking place within this library, but I narrowed it down that far. Not stalkery at all, but just to add to the kind of authenticity of the creative fantasy. I don't know. It was satisfying being able. I also found a photo of that library to put in here. I can't remember the name of this exact library, but it is from this place, and this picture is from the inside of this library in the correct place. So there's that. We've got the Underhawk, koi flies. This is to do with islands between roads. So I tried to get a photo of the best I could of the kind of area that was described in the podcast. And then I did some sketches. Well, I did one sketch. These other sketches are actually ones I had already. So here are May apples, which I don't think I've ever seen before, but they're just, the description and the mention of them multiple times made me want to look them up. These are wild violets, which are actually my favorite flower. They're actually the state flower of Rhode Island. So I'd already had that in clover, and these are three plants that are mentioned in this specific podcast, so I thought that was appropriate. And then I drew the cryptid that was mentioned as well, based on my imagination. Then there's this critter, which is a shape-shifting otter type thing. Nothing that cute can be purely good. He's quite mischievous. Omni Sparrow. There's lots of text. My handwriting isn't normally this good. I'm actually really bad at writing. It causes me a lot of pain. And what I do in these books is I actually write everything twice. So I do everything in pencil first for placement, and then I trace it over. So that slows me down quite a lot. I can draw for days, I can sketch and doodle, but when it comes to writing text, it's incredibly painful and awkward for me. So it was quite a labor of love getting through it, but I did. Glow Tiger, there's bits, there's a little sketchy doodle there. Hardened mucus notes, which dissolves with hoisin sauce and peroxide, apparently. An unusual burrow. It's quite a good one. Got a photo of a hill and drew in the hexagonal, I believe, hole, and a sample of the grass from that area for further analysis. We're getting toward the end now. Cemetery hound. I found a photo of a cemetery that roughly fit the description to add to this. And the last episode was basic facts about owls, and I just listed the facts about owls to fill up the last few pages. This episode actually featured Hank Green, which I can't imagine how exciting that must have been to collaborate with Hank Green on a project, but very happy for everyone involved. So yes, this is the back of the book now. We've got pocket here. I've got just ideally this would probably be in inches, because again, this is all American stuff. I managed to find it in millimeters, but I quite like it as an addition to the book. Thought it might be, useful. This is a bit of my own artwork that actually has nothing to do with the book, but as I said, a lot of this stuff makes me very nostalgic for where I grew up in North America, and these are blutes. They are lovely little wildflowers that I miss so much, and I just put them in there because it suited in my head. It seemed correct. More little quotes and bits of Jarod's work. He usually has like a quote at the start of each podcast that works really well for that. Here we have more owl things, the truth about owls, owl poetry, more little quotes, more seed packet for gathering specimens, perhaps spreading wildlife. And this part of the book flips out, and here I have got a functional compass, a thermometer, which is in Celsius. I know ideally it would be in Fahrenheit, again with the American-ness. But this is what I got to work with. They're also held in with Velcro, so they are detachable. And I thought like little gadgets in the book are quite interesting to me, just that little bit more functionality. This is a little, I don't even know what it's called. It's tweezers with a magnifying lens, so thought that could be quite useful. Yeah. And here we have, it's like a little removable sketch pad, part of the book. I put these in a lot of my books. This one just happens to be bound with a stick. Oh, excuse me, lots of talking. This is a Tim Holtz charm. In every walk with nature, one receives far more than they seek. I thought that was quite appropriate for this book, and I've just turned this into a little doodle pad. We've got a tree, a cricket. I miss crickets. I miss crickets so much. I really do. It's the weirdest thing how much I miss crickets. It's obviously a female. Then we've got some CryptoNature, a little chippy. I miss them too. We don't get chipmunks here. Haven't seen one in so long. You know what? Speaking of chipmunks, when I first moved to Scotland, damn near, I mean, I've been here for about 20 years now. I think this must have been 2006, 2007. I went into a pet shop and they had a cage full of chipmunks. And they were absolutely manic. It was just horrifying to me because they're wild animals and they should never be in a cage that small. And I've never seen them for sale since, but it was just the most bizarre thing I'd ever seen, and it was sad, and chipmunks are not pets. Anyway, I think that's the last time I saw a chipmunk, like, possibly in the last 20 years. Just more doodles, more bits of poetry from Jarod, and more crypto nature doodles. Yeah, so I like to make these little doodle pads that can be taken out of the books I make because they are replaceable and they can be taken away and put back in, and they look quite nice. There's a pocket here, more poetry. This is not anything to do with the CryptoNaturalist. That's my thing. I just happened to have it. I was like, that looks quite good there. This is more of that mossy stuff, glow in the dark, mossy stuff. Well, the mossy stuff doesn't glow in the dark, it's the glow in the dark grit paste white bits that glow. But anyway, and this is the closing statement to each and every podcast. Remember, we're all strange animals, so act like it. Seemed like the appropriate closing for the CryptoNaturalist notebook. Again, that's just a pocket. There's some other stuff illustrating the pocket. What have I got in here? Well, that's one of my favorite poems that he's done, so I included it here. And can I get it back in on camera? Maybe not. Putting a very thin notebook through an a very thin envelope through an embossing folder is quite a feat to then remove afterwards, by the by. So yes, this was a labor of love. It is a fan art project. I will not be selling this. It's my own personal thing to keep. I don't know if I'll do another one. I mean, I do have a lot more content. I think there's 70 something episodes now, and this only covers 30. So I suppose I could, but if I do, it won't be for a very long time. So yes, I do, in my books, I do flippy outy bits, lots of pockets. This is all just to show you how it could be used. This one, I think I put a few too many pages in, so it all closes up like that. It's a chunky beastie. But yeah, that's how you use a notebook like this, or a journal like this. And there's so many pages. There's so many pages, so many things I was able to fill it with. Again, all the CryptoNaturalist information will be in the description of this video. And I think that's everything that I wanted to say about this. I hope that you've found it somewhat inspirational, I suppose. And I'm going to go and make more books because that's where my brain's fixated right now. Making the books, making the things. I have some art trades that lined up this year that I'm working on as well. So I'll be showing you all the stuff with that. Art trades, Halloween Advent, lots of books, and all the volunteer stuff I've been working on too. I might at some point be able to show you more to do with that, but for now, I'm going to sign off and I will catch you later.